oh la la la, oh la la la, mamacita. I get you cooking paratha for Santa. So hurry, mama, bring out some more curry, 'cause it's Christmas time in this country. Fire in the chula, get
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Pleasant good morning to all and sundry on this, of course. Yes, it is the penultimate before the new year. Yes, it is all years. And of course, we will have some fun whilst at the same time bringing some serious information and, of course, discourse as you participate as well in terms of the new year, what to expect. But of course, more significantly, in order for you to know where you're going, you should have an appreciation of your past. That is history, of course. Once, of course, it is in perspective, and once it is real, and once it is, of course, of very evaluative in terms of objectivity as best as you can in a subjective scenario. That being as it may, of course, let's see a little more of the music, because I have to ask Dr. Khaled, and maybe you can tell me if you had your black cake, etc. I had a piece or two, but of course I also had some. No, I get a full-fledged punch of cream as yet, but of course I got something that is an alternative. You know, some people don't have all the ingredients, so they have to make do with what they have. Well, that is the scenario in Trinidad and Tobago today. But let's see a little more of the music before, of course, we go straight into the serious discussions as to where we are going, having regard to where we are at this point and where we have come from. So just momentarily, we will be with you. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I guess Santa cooking roti and paratha for Santa. That's a serious piece of domestic potential violence scenario. But we're not going to go there this morning, except, of course, to say to all and sundry, all the best for the new year, in spite of the pessimism that looms, and the whole question of property tax, and the whole question of increase in cost of living by an additional taxes or fees to be paid, such as electricity and water rates. And of course, a government that clearly has no qualms in, of course, imposing that, and then give us a Christmas a gift. On the one hand, of course, is George Young telling us that, of course, a 30-year agreement with the Venezuelans is a Christmas gift. But of course, at minimum, you could only get the benefits of that gift 4 years or 5 years from now. I mean, what a pathetic and what an insult to, of course, Christmas and the concept of Christmas and the giving and the receiving. But if that is the kind of gift that he wants, then as a member of this society, as a citizen, I don't want that kind of gift, because I prefer to see it, feel it, and of course, with immediacy. But of course, these are some of the kind of what I consider to be cacophonous and ambulatory verbalization and hoodwinking that has become stereotypical of this administration. This is, yes, the Sunday edition, but more significantly, the all years edition of the Corridor Transformation, Dr. Khaled and myself. Pleasant morning, Dr. Khaled. All the best to you and your family. I wish for you what you wish for yourself. And of course, I want, of course, to extend that to your immediate community as well as the national community. Pleasant good morning, and how has it been so far?
Brother, good morning.
Come closer to the
Good morning. I send the same to you and your family and the wider community. And praise God, man, it's been good. For the last 3 weeks, we had things going there every week.
I could well imagine. I could well imagine. I could well imagine.
For the children, last week Sunday, we had cater for 150 children, but after checking it, we realized it's really about 220 kids.
Yeah. Well, we too, in our own efforts,
Right.
Christmas morning, I had less work to do simply because we had less hampers to distribute. And but what we have had, of course, is a number of persons providing, or we didn't have the convenience of collecting from the what I consider to be the benefactors, those persons who will be giving. And therefore, what we propose to do, in spite of the fact that tomorrow is New Year's, we will not be able to get the difference. Poor as it is, paltry as it is, but we will, of course, do that early in the new year, maybe as early as Wednesday, Thursday, after the ringing in of the new year. But it has been a horrendous one for us from the perspective that we weren't able, of course, to put things in place logistically in order, of course, to make the Christmas and the New Year what we traditionally will want it to be. But I know you will have some information for us in terms of how people would have spent their Christmas so far, and of course moving into the New Year, having regard to the overall state of malaise as far as the country is concerned, and of course the respective communities such as ours that is clearly and has been defined as a poor community, but of course with socio-economic issues that clearly are different to those well-to-do areas and pockets of the society or of Trinidad and Tobago that would be faring a little better as opposed to an abjectly poor community. Your comments, and of course I know you want to get right into, of course, the state of crime and criminality in the country, and of course the boy, I don't want to even start a prelude on that because I may end tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So go ahead, my friend.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's been good, and our community, as I said, we had the thing, but it is the problem. It continues, so it's political. You know, I told someone about 2 days ago. He was saying, well, why you all have to look at everything through political lens. I say you have to look at things through political lens when the politics affect everything. I say the problem in this country, these guys have money to use in poor areas. They give out contracts to all the rich friends. You know, people need to start, well, to wake up and smell the coffee. Stop pretending that things is not political. Most of the businessmen in this country, and I can prove it, they started with government contracts. That's how they make the millions. And some of them are right now qualified to be billionaires. You know that too. And they start from a humble beginning, from a humble contract. I can remember just the other day, when Kamala was in office, and we were at you know where.
Yes.
We give out a contract to a certain company for 20 million. We will make a big thing about it. Now that same company sell the soul to the PNM, and they get in as much as $50-60 million contract and more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that person has to be from Mars or taking a holiday from the sun. I'm being that facetious because, I mean, it is just ludicrous that you don't understand as yet, and I'm sure that is a mature person you would be referring to. It's not what I consider to be on the link or a neophyte or a freshman, and I say freshman here from biological age perspective. In other words, you're not a 15-year-old you're talking to, or even an 18-year-old who has now come into the world and now beginning to understand the socio-economic and psycho-cultural realities and the impact of politics on the society. In a society such as ours, the government has always been a facilitator of the society. In fact, they continue, of course, to have in their budget about a third of the budget is always ascribed to or located in what is called the PSIP, the Public Sector Investment Program. And what that means, it means that therefore it is the area where they acquire goods and services with that part of the budget from private persons who now will use the business in order, of course, to gain traction, to gain benefits, to increase their own wealth, and therefore by extension that of the society, that and expanding the GDP, and they are expected in return, of course, to keep people employed as well as develop themselves, so that other places, so if they build a house, for example, it means that hardwares are going to benefit. Those trade persons in building construction or are masons or are electricians, etc., will now get work. People with roofing business will now get work, etc. So it has a rippling effect by the PSIP, so that when Dr. Rowley will tell us that it should be a privilege that you would get, let's say, a benefit from social welfare, which of course is a different area, but certainly it is necessary, because not everybody will be qualified to work, meaning that they may born with some disability, or whilst they were working, or whilst they were growing up, acquired a disability. Maybe they lost two eyes, or maybe, of course, they lost a limb, as the case may be, and therefore the society has to provide that. So I am very incensed, and I would like to start the discussion in that area. I am very incensed and disappointed, and of course, and totally flummoxed, frankly, as to the extent of apparent or public ignorance of Rowley and his ministers, who, of course, making it look as though the resources of the country, one, belong to them, and therefore they're private parlor, and they must say who must eat, but to tell us that we ought not to look forward to or for anything from the government. I think it is disingenuous. What will you do with the resources of the country? How would you balance and how would you develop this society without, of course, that system that's it? Otherwise, if that is the case, then make everything private. The government must make everything private. Privatize NGC, privatize everything. But the commanding heights of the economy and the fact that they get taxes even from these companies, so as to manage the administration of the country. I mean, to me, it brings into question whether they understand at all their role and responsibility for a nation, for the society, and for its welfare, and for its development. I think those kinds of statements is totally uncalled for. I think is an insult to the society, and Dr. Rowley and they obviously has outlived their usefulness as far as their contract with the society, having regard to the elections of 2015, 2020, and that they have betrayed the trust of the people. And recently, even for Christmas, the food cards and they by and large were not functional, and then they tell us something about for Christmas, the country getting more money consequential of the dragon gas. That is something at minimum some 4 to 5 years away. Dr. Khalid.
Well, yes, Lennox, you're correct. Yes, the thing is, right, as long as, and we've been saying this over and over, as long as you have racial voting, people voting race rather than voting people and performance. The society is divided. The the PNM would always be able to slip through.
Yeah,
But
what does that have to do? Sorry to interrupt you, but what does that have to do with the responsibility of the government?
because
How does that equate? You have the bank, you have
yeah,
the
but
resources, you have.
yes,
Go ahead.
Lennox,
Go ahead.
you have an uncaring group. That's the thing. You have let's be realistic, right? Let's be realistic. Even if you or I want to be the devil's advocate here, let's be realistic.
Yes.
You have from time immemorial, from 56, because this is old Year's Day, New Year's Eve,
Yes.
and they're supposed to be a little historical, true or false?
Yes, you're quite right.
All right. So let's go back for a little just for a minute or two. They came into office on 56.
Yes.
They came into office on a popular note based on race.
Yes.
Good? The person who was in office at the time was Bertie Gomes. Some
Yes.
people say Albert Gomes. POPPG, right?
Yes.
That, when I read about that campaign, even in this book that I have here,
Uh-huh.
right? This book, Introduction to the History of Trinidad and Tobago, right?
Uh-huh.
Right. Bridget and Barrington.
Right.
When you read this book, that campaign was very, very explosive based on race.
All right.
They went to town on Bertie Gomes. Good? And the PNM and Eric Williams slipped through.
Right.
He formed his party in 55,
Mhm.
well, late 55, and the election was, say, mid-year 56. The PNM slipped through,
Right.
right? Won. And ever since, what the PNM started doing, and Eric Williams, as much as I love him because I into education and learning, and I like what he was able to do with QRC and them places, because
Right.
at one time, as you know, black folks wouldn't, regardless how bright, they wouldn't get anything like that.
Right.
All right. So, but barring that, what he did was he worked out a deal
Mm-hmm.
with certain people in the society,
Mm-hmm.
the so-called French Creoles and the other non-black, and of course, well, Indians,
Mm-hmm.
and they ride, and people will get angry with this, but they ride on the back of the black masses,
Right.
and they talk a whole set of blackness, not black nationalism, blackness, and as I call idle blackness.
Okay.
And then making sense without any vision because they did not organize the society.
Right.
He, as a historian, he was one of the best. He was one of the best. So he, as a historian, would have known, if anybody else should have known, would have known what black folks went through.
Yes.
And in fact, I'll make another statement, people will be angry, is that, and you and I discussed it already, in the early days, let's say starting from even as early as 1915 or all that, coming
Uh-huh.
up, when the slavery was just abolished from 1838
Yes.
to all, so even from 1845 going up there, a
Okay.
lot of black people start organizing businesses.
Right.
When PNM come into office, most of those businesses they had, the majority of doctors and lawyers was black. They vanished, you know.
Yes.
A lot of black people own land, all in Laventille and thing. Certain people just get those lands now. And you could bear things to that.
Yes. Yes. Witness. Yes. Yes.
Because you know people whose land was taken away.
Yes.
I can remember as a young man growing up, it had a string of businesses from Fernandez straight back down to coconut growers and beyond. They were black businesses. They vanished. All that happened under the PNM, you know. You understand what I'm saying? So the reality is, because of their blindness and because of black people blind loyalty to blindness of the PNM that looking at a future and organizing the society just come to a historical thing and you have to organize it because the East Indians came here and they came here with a contract. We were slaves. Our ancestors was raped, brought from Africa and came here. They made all the promises that they broke it. So you, the government, will have to implement it. Tell me if I'm making sense. You, the
Yes.
government, will have to do that on your own. And they have not.
Yes.
And the slightest thing they're talking about, we know of the government. When the government, we in and we.
Yeah. Depending, in fact, exploiting us. I mean,
that's
I would
what it's
prefer to
doing.
use the term exploiting
Well,
us. Yes.
That's what they're doing. So this is why we are in this situation. And any party that come in to government must take care of the poor folks. They have to train them.
And poor here means across the board. It
Of
has
course,
nothing to
it
do
have
with
race.
ethnicity and,
Yes.
of course, tribalism
Yeah.
and
That-
all of the extraneous that will impede the natural progress optimally of the country.
That is why I use the word poor in preference of black folks.
Right, okay, good.
Understand?
No. I just want to make it clear because there are those who would interpret it differently. Yes.
So that is what it is. And you can't tell me you have a society that had a nice windfall in oil and thing, and you concentrating on just oil. All those programs that say that they have, those programs are not implemented properly. You have to train people to do different things with their hands and the mind, agriculture and different things. In the early days, this country was the best in the Caribbean and probably in the world in cocoa and all them kind of things.
That's right.
Coffee
And then the Dutch disease
Good,
stepped
good.
in, initiated by a PNM administration,
Yes.
Eric William in particular, and then it continues, of course, even to today, because, of course, the dragon deal is just one aspect of it, where he put all his eggs in one basket,
Right.
and then, of course, at the same time, simultaneously, the future fortunes of Trinidad and Tobago, and if you have a unstable regime in Venezuela, or indeed if another regime takes over from Venezuela, that particular project clearly would be in jeopardy because of the poor, again, because of the government stance. Because if they were as diplomatic as they ought to have been, and not biased, and seen so by the opposition in Venezuela, having regarded that we have, of course, anchored our future on the resources that Venezuela can now provide us. We haven't been, of course, should I say, exhaustive state, meaning that our reserves have been, of course,
Right.
we are old domain, and of course that's a wasting asset, and therefore there's nothing to plan back. Once it is extracted, it's gone, and or utilized. So therefore, your politics, your diplomacy with our neighbor on whom we depend and anchor our future must be such that whatever eventuality, Trinidad and Tobago must come out Trump. But of course, this administration clearly did not take that into account, and they therefore anchor themselves with an administration that clearly is that the opposition in Venezuela will, as far as my logic and common sense will assess, that once, of course, they get into office, the opposition, that any deal that Maduro would have made, in other words, may well be in jeopardy, including, of course, that of the dragon deal. Dr. Khalid.
Right. So the thing is, as long as they continue to manage the society like that, we will not be going anywhere, because you have a lot of suffering outside there, and no acts of crime, and in my opinion, everything is related.
Yes, indeed.
No acts of crime and that kind of thing. But guess who is surviving properly financially? They and the friends.
Yeah.
They give all the big contracts.
Oh yeah, they are the creme
Yes.
de la creme
And
of course.
Right.
I don't like to call it because Dr. Khalid is here, but I would want to say it on this occasion because we are at the end of the year, And of course, we have a new year. So let me see, to give an indication as to how aggressive I will be, I want to say that they are engaged in corrupt conduct and misbehavior in public office. But go ahead, Dr. Khaled.
Yeah, so, and never mind, that's reality. but the thing is, the thing, it can't stay like that. We have to save.
Not sustainable.
Yeah, we have to save the young people. You have to understand that you have to save the young people, and this is one of the reasons why they could say whatever they want about Kamala Prasad Bissessa. But the bus and the average where Kamala is concerned, because they came into office bashing her, and then they continue bashing her, and it had some disloyal people in the UNC who feel that to jump on that bandwagon of bashing her, demonizing her, ignoring the good job that she did while being the first female prime minister in this country. And they thought that by bashing her, should have done a number of things. One of them, leave the position as opposition leader, go and hide some way, run out of the country and live out of the country. None of those was done.
None of those. I mean, she has proven to be, a stateswoman of exceptional quality. And of course, I want to say I have a bias, yes. I'm a person that I totally, absolutely admire, simply because of the growth that she has exhibited from what I consider to be naivety to total and absolute maturity, and therefore a statesperson, a prime minister, future opposition leader, equal to any that the world could produce. That is the extent to which I laud her, and of course respect her for the kind of tenacity and the commitment and wisdom that she exudes on a daily basis, and every time, of course, she engages the public. Go ahead, Dr. Khaled.
When you look at her, and this New Year's Eve, Old Year's Day.
Yes.
When you look at her, let's be realistic and fair. She is super qualified. She's been local government. Well, I can remember her as the woman's army leader in the NAR. Remember that?
Yes, remember
she
that clearly.
All the things. She has been
to be a fine diamond.
She has been in the politics. She has been in the parliament. She in opposition as prime minister. She studied the cause, and the licks keep on coming. They keep on demonizing and attacking, saying all manner of things, and she stayed the course. And they call for election in the party. She go and she win. Then they call for her next one.
She won again.
They keep on pulling the Trump. they lose, and they say, well, even if we lose, you still not qualified. You still have to step down for weekend. I don't understand what kind of democracy is that.
Only last night I was looking at that matter, not on the live, but before and after. And what seemed to be very commonplace with that state, with those who are wishing for her to step down, they have never mentioned who should replace her,
No, they don't.
There's never a replacement candidate. It's always step down. But that cannot be in a vacuum. There must be a leader. Go ahead, Dr. Khaled.
You know what happened, Lennox? Yes. You know what is amazing? They underestimate the slaughtering of the PNM. If there's one thing the PNM good at, is what I call dirty politics.
Yes. And they can camouflage even a significant, a monumental, an abject defeat.
Man.
They can camouflage that. You see them in Tobago, Dr. Rowley is saying that the PNM is on the resurgency with 14-1. So early in the game, you are the resurgency. Come on, that's pie in the sky, and of course an illusion and figment of his pernicious imagination.
They're very good at divide and rule and then slandering. So they will say that with that little thing that happened in Tobago, I would not be surprised if PNM had something to do with the crazy way Duke continue to act over there.
I will not be
would not be
surprised by that.
surprised.
But of course, let's look at some
Yeah.
of the things that we would have discussed. I started last night, and of course we will some of the things that would have attracted, of course, and we would have discussed on this program. We will have some very short bites of those videos merely to discuss. And of course, don't forget you must call in as well. 337-6940. The lines are open. 337-6940. As we of course continue of course to look at the year in review, and as we look forward, of course, the final part of the program this morning will of course focus on the politics of what is expected, and of course get an opportunity to more elaborately express our adoration for, of course, the opposition leader, having regard to the fact that she is the inevitable prime minister come 2025 maximum. It could be before, but we only have 1 year anyway, and that will of course expire before Dr. Rowley would say Jack Robinson or Dr. Rowley. So, and you too, in spite of the pain and the ache and the agony and of course the disappointment of this administration, let's face it, the government has failed. They appear to be cursed. They have of course demonstrated no ability to of course explain to us why they have failed so miserably, and will continue to fail, having regard, of course, to what we have experienced and what we are going to get, what they have projected in 2024. Property tax, more light bill in terms of cost, water, and I see that they are selling now, of course, another major earner, another major of foreign exchange earning, one. Are talking about, of course, that energy company that would have been under the portfolio of CL Financial or Clico. They are selling that now. So all of the prize assets, they have sold it, of course, to, I think the matter has been consummated. They have sold it to Proman. Of course, that company had, I think, a certain percentage of ownership. Well, the government has sold their 56, I think, percent, which, of course, would have come from the efforts of those entrepreneurs under, of course, CL Financial and Clico, and at the same time making what I consider to be depressing news of our chief and our quality entrepreneurs, to see that their efforts are just, of course, transferred to a foreign entity, makes you cringe, and it sends shivers down people's spine to see that this government has done that to the local entrepreneurs, and what psychological depressiveness it will have for future entrepreneurs who have built their companies to the point where it is recognized internationally, regionally, etc., and to, of course, just fit it away in that way because they are looking, of course, for an easy buck for themselves, clearly, and not in the interest of the people. Dr. Khalid.
Yeah, well, they always wanted to get a Dupree and that company. Any businessman in this country, local businessman, who think that they will stand up against the PNM and say a management style, a managerial style is bad, would survive an attack from the PNM and possibly the destruction as they did to Dupree and CL Financial. That is something that's a kind of naive thing. You must
but
understand.
how people, it comes back to what you started this discussion with, how people could say that politics is not influencing every aspect of life, because that's a major, should I say, action, decision by the government, by the political directorate that are managing the affairs of the country.
Right, because Lennox, you have had one party in office for all these years. Let's be realistic, from 56 to now, how many times the PNM the PNM lose an election. 3 times, right?
Basically, yes.
Right, 3 times. So the rest of the years, they have been in office true or false.
True, and
All
even
right.
when they lost, it would have been just a 5-year period
Yes.
or less, as in the case of Pandey, because really
Yes.
five
Yeah.
times,
Good.
four times, sorry, because Pandey was very short-lived and it emerged
Yes.
with the
Yes.
1818
Good.
scenario, and then of course the PNM regained office again
And then the
in 21, 22 there.
right, and then the opposition, very naive. They in office and they're fighting for all sorts of things. I think one of the thing is to build a very strong opposition together with the UNC.
Yes.
A very strong opposition. I think the society has reached a stage right now where people expect 2 strong parties. Because if you have,
Two-party state,
but
so-called.
yes, but I purposely use the word 2 strong parties.
Right.
The PNM have their strongholds, the UNC have their strongholds. The East-West corridor must be penetrated. So those of us who looking at the politics from a realistic perspective, you must know that if you have other parties opposing both PNM and UNC within the East-West corridor, that is easier for the PNM to win.
I see, because
You understand?
I understand.
I'm
yes.
making sense along
Yeah,
that.
no, you're quite right.
So
There must be a gravitational pull
Yes.
to the
Good.
opposition,
So
and if that is not the case, then of course the PNM with its usual what I consider to be
Yeah.
minority government status will continue, because the popular votes will always go in favor of the opposition, simply
right.
because they are in the larger
Right.
by and large the majority. Go ahead.
good. But remember, we practice first past the
First
post.
past the post, yeah, and
So-
that is what the
so
PNM
good.
is very good at
Good.
and understands, yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't mind.
So the thing is, you need 2 strong parties, one in office and a strong opposition that can oppose. But the opposition as it is right now must be built properly and learn to, when you're in office, no problems always coming. I can give you an example from being there in the council. You have opposition. People come all the time with all kind of things. Everything they're dissatisfied for everything. And when you fix that problem, they still come back and say no. That's another problem.
Yes.
So you have to learn how to solve problems and hold the office together. That is what you have to learn to do. It's a patient thing. Because the work that Eric William did on this country wasn't easy.
Yeah, psychologically, particularly with the older folks and the first and second and possibly third generation of Trinbagonians. But let's go straight, of course, to one of the clips that we played for you, and of course we will do our analysis. Don't forget, of course, the number to call 337-6940. 337-6940 is flashing across your screen, and of course you can join us here on this, of course, all years morning, or pre-New Year's, or the penultimate before New Year's. Yes, and of course New Year's Eve as well. So you can give it any name, the same thing. We are here on the last day of the year 2023.
Because of the unusually high oil price and the improvement in gas price, we are going to get a bit more money than we had budgeted. Had we not had that increase, that unusual increase because of the Ukraine war, if we wanted to do those very same things, we would have had to borrow.
So I want to stop there, Dr. Callan, because of course I think the sense, the essence of what he wants to say is that there was a windfall, but of course I am. And that came to, of course, Heritage, the oil company, where, of course, not that they increased production, but because per barrel of oil, there was a doubling of price. He was able to get that $8 billion windfall of which he spoke. But he said why? He said not because Heritage increased, but because of the war between Ukraine and of course Russia. My thing is, my position is this: he was meticulous. He was studiously avoiding what could have happened if we still had the oil refinery existing in such circumstances. Dr. Khalid.
No, but that's a fact. They know because of the bad decision with the oil refinery. And I personally believe it's spite. Right? But because of the bad decision, we lose the refinery. And they cannot really make the kind of money that they would have made in addition to the Ukraine war. That is it. The refinery would have been making money.
We will be bathing in money. This is the natural assessment. But go ahead.
Right.
I don't want to preempt what you have to say.
So this is the problem with the PNM. And then when you have oil money, you're not planning properly. If I may use a scripture, I can remember Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him. He had to interpret a dream from the king. 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. Then he dreamt 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows. And Joseph interpreted that the 7 lean cows was 7 years of famine that would come after the 7 fat cows. And he advised him, when you have the 7 fat cows, the 7 years of plenty, put aside for the rainy day. They don't do that. They don't put aside for the rainy day. They don't plan by training, etc., and doing things like that. They live it up, and they tell people about lean off the government and all that. Wean off the government when they're taking stuff and giving all type of contracts to their friends, and they make a mess of things. And then when an opposition comes and you win, they get a squeeze through and you win. What they do, people start rebelling because you have to make certain decisions like what we had to do in the NEM. And then the PNM, who now come out of office 2 years ago, a year ago, start complaining.
And was the cause why you had to take austerity measures in order to bring back the economy and the society back on even keel. Go ahead, my friend.
And they get the unions and all of them
decide because it's myopic and short-sighted policies, or should I say attitude and argument that are more emotional rather than, of course, pragmatic.
Good, and they have the unions demanding all kind of money, and you say, listen, man, I can't give you the money where you're asking for, where you get a 14%. PNM joined with them and said, no, PNM only offering them 4%.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So that is the thing, because when they're in office, they did not use the 7 years of plenty to prepare for the 7 years when you don't have for the years.
But my thing is, and I'm taking your point because it is historic, and now I am, of course, relating it to contemporary times and to see the political strategy that would have been adopted. Now, why I'm saying so is because in the current circumstance, here we have entities such as the corridor transformation, you have Anil Roberts, you have the ground report, you have, of course, Victor Roberts and others who are taking the fight. Would you say in retrospect that the NAR did not argue well that it was the PNM that was responsible for the state of affairs, and that therefore the action that they had to take was squarely to be blamed on the PNM? I can't recall that the NAR had taken that position, or maybe they would have assumed that the people would have known, but you don't take that for granted. As we have seen now, where the UNC and people like us are now saying squarely that the PNM is the, of course, the culprit here, is the bane, is the authors of the economic and social decadence that we are seeing today, inclusive, of course, crime and criminality. And whilst we could show statistically and rationally, we must emphasize. And I think, can you now say it's a different time then as opposed to now in terms of laying blame and not trying to be as ingratiating as possible and being humane in a situation where your enemy clearly will not hesitate to, of course, not only say that you are corrupt, but also take action, even if they manufacture it in order, of course, to manifest a corruption that is a figment of their imagination. And I'm talking here about Rowley and of course I'm talking specifically about their fictitious creation of that case against Alan Ramlogan and Ramdeed. But my point to you is, as a member of the NAR at the time, and now, because I myself have my own view, is it that they didn't play the politics as they ought to, in order, of course, to treat? They were treating the PNM with kids' gloves, while, of course, they were taking all of the pressures, and the PNM turn around and bite them and pretend as though they were not the ones that created the problem for Trinidad and Tobago at that period, 1986 to 1991.
Right. You're correct. You're correct. But the but is two different. The NAR in office, you have to remember, all the opposition came together and they started to fight each other. People don't like to
at the same
that.
time.
Yeah, they were fighting each other. If the NAR, as they had won 86 election, worked together, in 1991, there no way they was going to lose.
But do you think that that there was sufficient, what I consider to be, recrimination on the part of the narrative, a laying blame? Because I saw Robertson as a decent man, and he saw politics as one where you do not attack your opponent and call them corrupt, etc., except of course in the campaign, by and large, which everybody knew.
But listen,
but white in government.
NAR was not just Robert Smith. Point of just listening.
Okay, go ahead.
NAR was not just Robert Smith. Pandy and all of them. Everybody know how aggressive Pandy and them was.
Right.
The aggression that Pandy had in the campaign for 86 election, he take that same aggression after he left the NAR in 88. Remember them mash up.
Yeah.
And he turned that aggression against what was left of the NAR.
But wasn't it at a time when the decision had to be taken to, of course, take away cola and this and that? Wasn't that the right time when, of course, the internal antagonism would have been reinforced by that? But I'm talking about before that. Was the NAR, when they were a union, when they had to face the realities, were they too complacent? Were they too, let's say, congenial to the PNM? That's the point I'm trying to make here.
They made their points. They made their points, and they put aside. There are certain things that Robinson did that I still don't agree with. Like even starting after the win, and that San Fernando East seat.
Okay.
With Merle Stevens.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
let me make my point.
Yes. Make
So,
your point. I want to get that out.
all right.
Yeah.
With Merle Stevens,
Yes.
they gave P&M a break.
Right.
I believe if they had, you recall, it would not be no 33-3. It would have been 34-2.
34-2. Right.
All
Good.
right?
Right.
That is a reality.
Right.
But I'm saying, so you had that decision that Robinson made. So you had a whole set of grievances. You had grievances from the ONR faction, and then that ONR faction, in my opinion, people can question it if they want, but in my opinion, was responsible with some other people from the ULF faction from Pandy and who were dissatisfied because they didn't get this and they didn't get that.
Right.
And that was still the whole thing. And then when Robinson Pandy said something happened, and Robinson said so and so happened because of the stinge on the deck of the boat. And then because the vomiting on the boat.
Right.
And
Okay.
Pandy said they vomiting because of the stench on the boat.
Right. Okay.
Remember all that?
Internal. Yes.
So all that big fight start. And you talking about 86. And by 87, 88, everything was ripe. So in my opinion, them didn't have no time to settle down because they were just fighting among themselves and they didn't try to hold it together. And then you had people who could have solved the problem and things like weren't there. Carl weren't there. He, in my opinion, if I had was to choose, say both of them, he and Robinson was alive now, and I had to choose who would have been the leader. Right now, I would choose Carl.
Yeah, right.
Back then, I choose Robinson.
Okay.
I felt Carl would have done a better job in holding the thing together. You see, when you have diverse groups in an organization, you need a holder. You need people who could hold it together.
Right.
You need people who can.
Yeah, that lagly, that glue. Yes.
You also need a soother. People who can soothe it, like a father in a house and a mother in a house. When you have problems among the children, rather than getting mad and leave and so you go here and go there to mash up the family, you have to hold it together. You have to talk. Sometimes
the adhesive, yes.
You have to separate each other and then pull it together. You need that kind of mentality.
Right.
I always argue in the opposition, and I still argue now for what I call a counselor elders. You need experience. So the NAR never implemented all that. What the NAR had was a whole set of educated intellectuals.
Good.
Men who achieve.
Yeah.
But that ability to hold. And that
was not there.
And as
it proved to be not there.
Good. And as opposed to the PNM, who always had cuss out. But the only way we would know that they had an internal fighting and cursing each other among themselves is somebody come and say Lennox or Khalid, so and so on.
Except, of course, when enter, of course, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. Right. He was in Parliament, of course, challenging his leader.
So I want you to understand what I was saying. That is what happened there.
Right. So let me rephrase it now based on the explanation that you gave. Would you say then that what remained of the government, having regarded to the fragmentation, I talk about the NAR government under Robinson, he remained prime minister. Would they solve on the PNM whatever remained of the NAR moving toward? Because let's face it, the 5 years. In spite of that, the last 5 years. So therefore, would you say that they went soft on the PNM, even in the face of that fragmentation, of which, of course, you directed the argument, and I had to adjust my own question, because what I want to make the comparison between then and now, because there's an all-out attack on the PNM in like manner, having regard to the fact they never got it like how they are getting it now. But of course, I seem not to recall the level of tenacious attack that the NAR across the 5 years, as I'm seeing now, against the PNM. The PNM, of course, is reeling. They have to find ways and means to take the narrative and so on. But then they were controlling the narrative right up, of course, until 1991.
Right. They were controlling the narrative because you had a whole set of information coming out of what was left of the NAR to the media. I can remember we had a National Council meeting in St. Joseph, right? And it was said by, I won't say the person who said it, he was the chairman of the NAR at the time, right? And he said, don't talk to the media. Why it is, after the meeting, I came outside and I said, so 4 or 5 prominent guys at the time talking to the media, giving them information.
So it was a bunch of, or a band of what I consider to be headless chicken.
Exactly.
Headless chicken. And of course, any port for a storm, any and everywhere, anything goes. All right.
So in my opinion, the NAR,
they weren't able to coalesce in order to have a strategy against the PNM.
NAR was responsible for their own
demise. All right,
demise. And after that, things went and then they started attacking people like my boy who started to talk for unity. And remember when he became the leader, those same guys.
Yeah, the Dukaran?
Well, not only Dukaran, you have the others, all of them.
Okay.
They went after him and they started to mash him up, and then they put Selby.
All right, so they were too overwhelmed with their own internal matters. Right. So your argument is sustained throughout the period, whether the breakup or the fragmentation took place or not. They simply weren't able to get their political act together.
They had their own problems.
I accept. I just wanted to get because I seem to see, we need to talk that so that we do not make mistakes in the future. And I think one of the strong points of the UNC and this particular opposition leader is that she has recognized that and has made tremendous adjustments. Fortunately, not too late. I would not see the defeat, for example, in 2020 in that 2020 elections as not recognizing or conscious of that fact. I think what we have is another dimension of the PNM that we overlooked, and that is to say their infiltration in the various institutions, particularly, of course, EBC, and a prime minister willing not to be sincere, not to be honorable, not to be democratic, and he did not, or put another way, he orchestrated the non-presence of international observers here. And of course, coming out of that experience, a number of discrepancy coming out of that 2020 elections that is totally disquieting and would have had to be recorded by, if there were international observers here, independent, of course. But of course, we know, and therefore, going into 2025, I could bet your bottom dollar, no such thing will be allowed. No such opportunity will be allowed. There must be free and fair elections from the responsibility of the EBC and, of course, to the other elements and players in terms of getting independent observers here. And people like us and, of course, other entities are monitoring as well in such a way so as to ensure that there is free and fair election and elections that is free from fear. Dr. Khalid.
Yes, I agree with that too.
Let's go to the next clip. I think we have exhausted that one because, of course, the windfall of which Dr. Rowley spoke had nothing to do with the government expanding the economy. It was simply the war between, of course, as he said, Ukraine and Russia that caused us. And outside of that, he continues, of course, and would have continued to borrow. Incidentally, debt to GDP is something in the vicinity of 90%, heading inexorably to 100% under this administration, even though he said he came here, of course, to do what? to do more with less and always protecting the country's purse. But we have more expenditure than ever before. We have more debts than ever before. And of course, in the case of the reserves, it has moved, of course, from 10 billion that he met in 2015 to about 6 billion, so they say, but I say it is more like 4 billion. I mean, and don't be annoyed with me, but of course, I don't believe at all, having regard to the level of wastefulness that we see all over the place during this administration, and the priority WAP, where of course they have conspirators, criminal entity, not only the PNM, but of course the cabinet itself, having regard to what the decision made by it as far as the Petrotrin is concerned, and multiple other decisions that saw the flitting away without the appropriate returns and or expansion for employment opportunities, etc., and for business confidence in the society since 2015, but more so in 2023. Let's go to the next clip.
What I'm going to say to you here today is likely to be part of a wider text, because I am really trying to write some of the history of this country. It involves my personal knowledge, and most importantly, one learns from your exposure. It registered in my cranium that you have to be alert. So therefore, what I'm going to read for you today on this text that I've prepared is called a case study of a project where government has questions to answer. The process for the construction of this highway from San Fernando to Point Fortin was initiated by a previous PNM government. And I come specifically to the Manning administration of 2007 to 2010. The North-South Highway artery had reached Golconda by 2010. The next leg was now to be onwards from there to Point Fortin. The Point Fortin Highway exercise was initiated through the process of invitation of tender in early 2010. However, although tenders were received in April 2010, the contract was not awarded prior by the PNM, since the bids received were significantly higher than the in-house engineer's estimate. And that in-house engineer's estimate was for $3.6 billion. So in 2010, that was the target expenditure for that highway, $3.6 billion. On March 4th, 2011, the UNC government, through NIDCO, populated by different people, not the current people who are in NIDCO, those who were in post in NIDCO on the board at that time, awarded a design-build contract to a Brazilian firm, Construtora OAS SA, known as OAS, for the lump sum of approximately $5.2 billion, or $1.6 billion more than the original engineer's estimate. Now,
so I think that's enough on that. We know what transpired subsequently, but Dr. Khaled, first and foremost, Dr. Rowley has said in that particular clip that he wanted, of course, what he was referring to there was part and parcel of his experience, his assessment as to the history of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course suggesting that somehow in the 5 years of the UNC that there was so much what I consider to be mismanagement and frankly corruption, because that's what he was talking about when he said that the PNM wanted, of course, to look at $3 billion, and of course the incoming UNC under Kamala Prasad Bisesa gave the contract for 5 billion and suggesting that somehow the difference of 1 point something billion, there's something untoward about it. But the first thing that came to my mind is when he said it registered in his cranium. Is the cranium? The cranium is supposed to be the holder of the brain. So I don't know if it registered in his cranium, which of course is the bone that comprise the skull, and inside of that is a brain. So is it that he was talking about his cranium or his brain? That's another story. You could determine that. But for like me, who of course is very meticulous about words, you will and the use thereof, you will understand why it registered with me. There's a difference between the cranium, as far as I'm concerned, and the brain. Whether you use it interchangeably, I suppose in that particular case you have to, of course, probably look at it in that way. But I would not have choose the cranium as the word to be used there. I would have used, of course, the brain or my intellect or something to that nature. But that being as it may, that is water under the bridge. What I want to focus on, however, is the fact that here it is they wanted to do it for 3 billion, and then of course he's making it look as though 5 billion under the UNC is something untoward, something sinister, something corrupt, because that is where he went and continues to go. But the first and foremost, Dr. Khalid, what I want to ask of you is that a government in office, the OAS company was a company that was also considered by the PNM. The UNC hired that company, but the highway is now for 5 billion. Why would Rowley seem to suggest to the population that there was something wrong with it when a new government came into office, looked at the project, and decided to do it for 5 billion? What is wrong with that?
Well, as I told you before,
Yes.
as I said before, the opposition and those of us who are against the PNM politically
Yes.
in this country underestimate the PNM ability to slander when they're in office. The thing is, this whole thing with OAS, as he admitted, it was something that the PNM, when they were in office, they are the ones who organized that project and even had OAS as one of the bidders. True.
That's right.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
Now what he has done, the project, you have to remember, this project, the largest highway, something like that magnitude ever in this country,
Yes.
that was done by one Kamala Prasad Bisesa and Carson Charles. Good. That is something that could propel them into office. So he's not going to allow something like that. So what he used is he started to use the PNM ability to slander with the dirty politics and make that an issue when they are the ones who kick everybody out of office when they win, take the project away from OAS, who's supposed to be their friends, and make that an issue. And the thing is, Dr. Charles, when he went in the parliament as a senator, he answered that question. They have not answered him. They said it was going to a joint select committee. Up to now, no joint select committee, because they know if they go there in the joint select committee and he come in there to answer the thing with Moonilal and them, they have problem in there. So it turned out from a joint select committee to a PNM select committee. Joint select is mean the opposition and the government.
Yes.
Now they just have the people there. Good. And even when you look at other thing, when you want this talk on crime, and Kamala say, okay, I will work with my expert on crime. Guy Griffith, he said, no.
An expert that he identified as an expert, but when circumstances were not as antagonistic as it is now.
Yes. So that is it. Because with Gary Griffith, he burst on his average. He thought if he had made Gary Griffith commissioner of police, Gary would have run out there as an
And do his bidding. And do his bidding.
And what was his
do as
bidding?
he say, yeah.
What was his bidding? To arrest everybody.
Yes, from the previous administration and or Kabla Prasad Bissessa, UNC administration.
Well, Kamla was supposed to rep me in prison.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
So-
indeed. But he burst on the average.
He burst on his average, and that's the problem.
Yeah, well, there are other issues because he gave the impression as well that the PNM was so meticulous about expenditure, the $3 billion that they withdrew, and they did not. They find it was too much. Any of the bidders would have brought in, and therefore they suspended the entire exercise. But I want you to understand, and I take your point. That's why I'm laughing, because Dr. Rowley is such a wily fella and such an insincere and dishonest man, and that of course that would have occurred around 2007, but they postponed the award, and suggesting, of course, that they went out for tender and so on, but not indicating to us that the elections of 2009 was a preemptive election. It was an election called before time. And therefore, it would have been impossible to put all of that together in time for just 2 years to go. Because remember, Manning called the election 2 years before. And therefore, that entire project would have been abandoned. And it would not have had enough time for them, of course, to engage another company in order, of course, to execute that particular project. But seeing and knowing Rowley as he is, and of course, well known to deflect and to introduce that which is not there for your consumption, usually pernicious and of course malicious, as we saw with the pieces of paper that he called emails, to of course send your mind in a direction that clearly does not exist. And at the end of the day, he then tells us that there was some clause that of course was introduced. Of course, Carson Childs explained the entire exercise. But prior to that, he never told us two things. He was telling us before he found himself in the situation that he has found himself in. He never told us that he frustrated the OAS into leaving the country and therefore breached the contract. He never told us that. And he never told us either that the monies that they recovered, the 1 billion, was as a consequence of a prudent arrangement with the UNC to ensure and protect the public's interests, yours and mine, by telling them put up that as a bond. He never said that. And then, of course, he went on to say, these days he's not saying that the company was bankrupt, when we know, and we were saying that on this program, that the country, of course, that particular company in its parent company in Brazil filed for, of course, bankruptcy protection as opposed to bankruptcy itself. But Rowley was telling us that these days, he ain't talking that at all. He talking bankruptcy protection. So we know that he was on nonsense. We know that he was trying to deceive, and the entire thing has now come full circle. Now we have to pay back. You and I have to pay back over $1 billion, and so they're trying, of course, their best to put it in local courts in order to find a way to get out of it. No way they could get out of it, because the arrangement is international arbitration. That was part of the contract. What he is doing is trying to delay the inevitable, and of course, they're trying to generate all kinds of obfuscation, all kinds of deception to, of course, justify something that is unjustifiable. Dr. Khalid.
No, you're correct, Lennox. Yeah. I like how you put it there. You put that beautifully. That is how I see it.
All right.
They can't justify it, so then they have to lie. That's what they're doing. They're lying about it, and then they're playing on the ignorance of the population. And they're also playing on the population view of seeing politics from ethnicity. From ethnicity, that is what it is. That is.
So only a certain ethnic group who will take that kind of hogwash that
Right.
is
And-
totally defies logic and,
Right.
and common sense
And-
based
and-
on the facts.
Yes, and not only that, poor people, especially those who are not supporting the UNC, will take that and run with it.
Yes.
This is why I also took the previous points that you made. Now we have a lot of different people opposing the PNM,
Yeah.
with social media helping us too.
Yes, sir.
That you have Victor Roberts, you have you, myself, you have other people just ponging at it, and they
Yeah, the narrative has been taken
Right.
away from them. The initiative has been taken away from their propaganda.
but-
It's
right.
under serious threat.
right.
Yes.
But also, people must see it. They cannot use the main weapon. What is the main weapon? Race. You have men of African descent who are intelligent, who are, for want of a better word, very black conscious, and telling you, listen, they're playing games. Don't let us fall for that same old trick of race, because they're not in that.
That's right.
And
Exactly.
we're pointing out to them.
And social media, of course, is
Yes.
is on the forefront
Yes.
of that attack.
Good.
Yeah,
But-
to make certain that they get the reality and get to reality
But-
and be conscious. Go
Back
ahead.
in the 80s and the 90s, you just had the Express, the
Yeah, this-
Guardian, and
But this is what we are doing
yes,
today. No traditional media will give us 2 hours.
No,
traditional
no.
media. So
No.
I say praises, of course, to social media, praises to YouTube, and of course all the other social media platforms that we can get an opportunity. And of course, what it does is enhance our democracy, because it is about information dissemination. And once you get the right information, you make the right choice. When you get information from a source or whose interest it is to give misinformation, disinformation, as the PNM has, then you find yourself, of course, making poor choices, and the decadence and the deterioration of the society continues, of course, at an alarming pace. Let's go straight to Dr. Charles and hear his response to all of what, of course, Dr. Rowley had proposed.
So let me come to the money part.
Rishi, go and read some.
This billion-dollar talk,
Rishi.
and this clause that was removed from the contract, you know full well no clause was removed from the contract. Addendum 2 did not remove any clause. I've said it over and over. What happened? It did not, no clause was removed. There were consequences to entering into negotiations and to deciding that you are going to continue with the works. The obvious consequences of that. So it's not a matter, some kind of simple matter of removing a clause. No. There are
So, of course, remember I said that apart from, of course, the what I consider the confusion that he created in the minds of the average listener, and not factoring, of course, the fact that the PNM did not have the time to, of course, to execute the project, because an early election was contemplated and was executed. Rowley himself being at the forefront of causing Manning to call an early election. So therefore, no way they would have been able to consider it. But of course, he went on to talk about a clause that, of course, somehow became the death knell for the UNC as far as he's concerned, because it was corruptly done just before the calling of the 2010. Sorry, the 2015 general elections. I mean, total madness. And of course, out of it all entirely, because of course it was simply not so. And it is a traditional thing. Nobody told Rowley just before the Tobago elections to empty a third of the budget in Tobago. Nobody told him that. that is usually done by the incumbent who don't want to trust, who in some instances, or in many instances, don't trust the incoming possible administration, so they want to complete a particular project or several projects or so. That is normal. It just came, the election came, and therefore they have to deal with the election, but they want to make certain that our next incoming government doesn't have to deal with that, and that has happened more with the PNM than anybody else. So to say there's something untoward about it, I think it was a very, not only dishonest, not only disingenuous, but certainly totally misrepresenting the realities of such a circumstance. But we will talk a little more about that in the new year, because we need to talk about those situations. Whether it is right or wrong is a different story. But the fact is that it happens. And of course, Rowley cannot absolve himself and take the PNM out of that loop, when in fact they have done it more than anybody else. We just have to look at the Tobago House of Assembly election. We also have to look at the local government elections as well, what they try to do. Pave all the roads in the country, particularly the major thoroughfare, just on the eve of the elections. So that is nonsense, and of course it is an indictment on the PNM and Rowley in particular, to show that that is conmanism, and of course, as I say, dishonesty to the hilt. But let's get on with Castle Charles and his response as far as that so-called painful, as far as Rowley is concerned, and ought not to be clause that he referred to, because now he has to pay back. He has to pay back, bust on his average again, and has to pay back $1 billion, which he got boasted and got into government with, and now will take him out of government as well, because of course it showed that what he did, just as the emails, is that he orchestrated the frustration of OS and left. And now that the arbitration say, listen, you breached the contract, you, Rowley, and the PNM breached the contract. He's trying to salvage and trying to deflect attention from something that is not deflectable, or indeed cannot be defended.
Consequences of deciding that you're not going to terminate under what you think is bankruptcy or judicial reorganization, and you think you want to terminate under that, which is optional. But you decide you're not going to do it, you'll have to find a different way to terminate if you want to terminate. And there are ways to terminate a contract. If you terminate the contract by first starving the contractor money, and after you get no money and you can't work, you don't terminate him for non-performance, well, you could probably estimate what will happen after that.
Well,
I won't have to say what happened after that. But I can tell you, I was there until December 2015, and we did not get a red cent from a new administration for the highway.
Dr. Khaled, you heard Dr. Charles in response, of course, to the accusation that somehow Dr. Rowley absolved him himself from the fact that he breached the contract, he starved the people of money. Your common sense will tell you, as a contractor, your principal not paying you for work that would have already been done. You have, of course, claims inside, and you sticking around still. Anybody with a modicum of common sense and doing business will certainly get out of it. So Dr. Khaled.
No, listen, man, that is correct. I could also go further and say they brought people in NITCO, because I was there. I was in my office on Edward Street there.
Yes.
And I got a call saying, come over, so I have so many policemen upstairs there. So I and others went to give Dr. Charles moral support.
Right.
And they took people in the office to say that he was shredding documents. Yes. And when the policemen, it have some policemen with conscience too.
Right.
When they went in there, the only shredder they saw was a new shredder in a box with plastic over it. So the police said, wait, what is shred on this?
So they make a mockery.
They make a mockery of themselves.
And asses of them. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And so that is what they do. This is why I keep on happening on the dirty politics. And this is why they had to back down, because he's clean and they can't pin him down with anything. So he was the best guy to go there in the parliament as a senator to defend that.
The defendant, yes, obviously, temporary senator, casting charge, and of course, so we need not to go further. That was a matter that we raised here. But as you talk about shredding, I remember very distinctly Zephyrin, the fellow who was charged. Well, he has so much charges against him now. He was charged with, of course, Manny MacDonald. Well, she has escaped. She has escaped, of course, prosecution because of her death. So the matter dies with her. But of course, he is still around. I think it's about 20-something charges. But listen, I was there and I had a friend who worked, I could say at least the organization, MTS, who called me and said, Smith, you know, Zephyrin shredding documents inside of the Self-Help Commission because he was in charge of that particular entity. This is no way attempting to influence the outcome of the cases, but I'm just saying what transpired and what I got in terms of shredding of documents. And of course, based on what is before the court now, one can easily say, well, the police didn't go act just so. They must have had some kind of evidence to show that, of course, something like that was happening. I just thought I should intervene there. I know the matter is sub judice. It is serious. Of course, it is about, of course, misbehavior in public office and, of course, receiving money under false pretense and of course, money laundering and all of that. I mean, he got I think, 20-something charges. 20-something charges. He was there for too long. And of course, that would have been his bane, the bane of him. I don't know if he's going to capitalize now on, because Marlene McDonald would have been jointly charged with him. So I suppose dead man or woman tell no tale. So he may well say she and not him. I don't know what his lawyers will do. But of course, as I said, I don't want to go further on that one. But it's very interesting indeed. So, Dr. Khalid, that's how the cookie, of course, crumbles in circumstances where you try to do evil. Because I remember Zephyrin. My organization was one of the first organizations to get a grant recommended by the Inter-American Development Bank that first funded self-help under the NAR first and foremost. They introduced that particular institution, self-help. This woman always lay claim to the name itself. She always with self-help up and down the place. A community activist. She always claimed that. But that being as it may, the fact of the matter is that we were supposed to be, and because I find it taking long, and I wrote back to the Inter-American Development Bank. I also wrote, I think, to the then Prime Minister, and he took it personally, and we never got the money. I think it was $100,000 to, of course, we would have done magic with that money if we got it. But he decided to give it to another group, just to spite me. But today, he had 20-something cases pending. You see how the Lord has moved? Lord has moved in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Exactly. And the hole you dig for others, you may well get it. You may well fall in it. And oh, what a tangle web we weave when we first set out to deceive. And so when you have good people, because here am I today talking to you on matters of this nature, and he, of course, is licking his wounds and to see if he can extricate himself from these multiple charges because of the same abuse, as far as I'm concerned, of the officer that he would have held. In my case, I'm talking about here, where, of course, he acted unjustly and utilizing, of course, the office to satisfy his personal agenda, and he believed that I offended him, and therefore he must take revenge that way. Another fellow like that too, of course, is not Anthony, but of course Garcia. Was that Garcia? Is that he is in AGC and Unicot. Dr. Rowley's bagman. What's his name? Noel Garcia. Yes, that's the man. Noel Garcia. That's similar. That's the brother, the ex-education. Yes, that's right. A similar fella. He utilizing office to, of course, fight his enemies, and of course not being objective and providing the service for which he was hired by that particular or institutions to which he is attached. because he has a personal vendetta against that individual. Oh, what a burning shame. Just like Rowley, just as Hines, just as, of course, every single member of this administration. Once you talk up against them, as we are doing now, certainly you become their enemy, when in fact, the information is pellucid, it's practical, it's pragmatic, and first and most of all, real and truthful. Let's go straight, of course, to the other item we would want to discuss briefly. Dr. Khaled, well, look, Dr. Rowley there in a hoodie, and of course the Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau. He it was a press conference to summarize what transpired between CARICOM and Canada in that CARICOM Canadian summit. And there is Dr. Rowley, of course, in a hoodie. What are your views? Of course, the general view is, and of course, Kamala Prasad Bisesa made it very clear that, of course, he had to find something to put on to look the part as a prime minister, but instead that is an embarrassment, and he ought to have known that. And therefore, while he said he was on his way to the airport, well, I would have expected that all of his suit and so on would have been there. So all he had to do was to put on a jacket and go there. Yeah. Why it is that he found himself there? Is that truly representative of Trinidad and Tobago, or is it part of the hooliganism that, of course, is now parading and pervasively and encountered with in Trinidad and Tobago? Go ahead.
No, well, I would say, apart from whatever else it is the PNM and Dr. Rowley, and they believe, and they probably know they can get away with anything. So that is nothing. If it was some other political leader had done that, the PNM would have go insane on that.
Well, we are insane and incensed about it. I can tell you that. So that's just the PNM alone.
Right. So no. What I mean, if they PNM,
I hear you.
would have done that. So they, you see, I keep on looking at one thing with them. They take people for granted because they are accustomed winning. They know they have a group of people who are so bent on seeing race rather than performance that they will vote for them, and then they have that, and then you have opposition keep on voting in the election to take votes away. Once we decide that it's two party facing the polls, and I will be talking about that all the time, the PNM would not be able to get away, because we have had a history where they came up against a united party, even though the party didn't last, and they lost.
Yes. Well, of course, no conscientious Trinbagonian will appreciate that way. And look at the Canadian First World Prime Minister Trudeau, of course, as compared to our Prime Minister, looking like a bloody gangster. Let's go to the next clip one time, and of course, this one we will conclude because we did take up about 15 minutes of your time, so we will give it back to you now. But of course, I think this clip will do justice to that deficiency this morning of having been tardy.
The Honorable Minister of Works and Transport said the Point 14 highway is the biggest stain and corruption in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. Even though this PNM government has paid $11 million for a commission of inquiry that has started, you know. It they even started, not even on your marks. They may even gone down, but $11 million gone. But the Honorable Minister highway, which was selected by the PNM OAS before May 24th, and negotiations based on the Hansard of the Honorable Member for Diego Martin Northeast back in 2016 would show the negotiations with the contractor that begun in January and they completed in a week. Somebody else would
President, good morning. Welcome to the corridor. President, good morning. Welcome.
Of the
Yes.
listeners on the program,
Yes.
WhatsApp, Facebook, and YouTube.
Yes.
I want to wish everybody a happy new year, although I know, well, next year will be a different year and a very challenging year. But I pray and beseech all these evil things, all these things that are happening in this world. I pray that it will be different next year. And we always have God in the middle of everything. And I pray that next year will be different. It will be peaceful. And we getting through with whatever we decide we want to do next year with God bless. All right. You have a wonderful day.
Same to you, and of course, to you and your family, present good day as well as a new year, free of unpleasant incidents. As we as human beings, we must be optimistic because we are considered to be, of course, very existential human beings, and that is to say, we try to control the conditions under which we exist, whether it be, of course, climatic or in our homes or in the social environment or in the physical environment, in other words, as the case may be. So you have a wonderful one as well. And you, by extension, of course, all of you out there across the globe. Let's go back, of course, to Arnold Roberts and the whole question of corruption by this administration and their boldface and should I say, brass face as well as ablum in your face, stealing and telling us that the sky is now, of course, beaming with beautiful rain, and that the grass is growing, and that everything is very, very, very pristine, clean, rife, and of course we are not, of course, suffering from their policies and program. Let's hear Annie Roberts.
Deal with that. I don't have time to deal with that. However, I must address the Honorable Minister of Works and Transport, the biggest corruption, and his Honorable Prime Minister used a very vile term. He said it was a rape of the country. I mean, that's a Prime Minister. I don't even know why he likes to use that word or what he knows about that word. But let me ask the Honorable Minister of Works and Transport if he ever heard of something called the Brian Lara Stadium. That was budgeted at $175 million and ended up at $1.3 billion. That was, the entire complex was budgeted at $850 million under the PNM to include a cricket stadium, 3 AstroTurf, a 50-meter pool, gym, cafeteria, hotel. And now the stadium alone, the average cost per seat is $130,000 US per seat. Every citizen that go there to watch a CPL match should look under their seat and see if they get a diamond ring from that PNM. And they're talking about corruption. What about we still looking for the horse and them in Carney Racing Complex? Where the horse and them? I want to put a bet. You talking about the greatest corruption? Carney Racing Complex, over $200 million, when a million was a million. If you equate that to nowadays, like $1.6 billion. And not a horse run, a horse even canter. Bridgman's NGC Atlantic train won $233 million when everybody tell you don't spend no money, and you're talking about corruption. Scarborough Hospital, the financial complex, fake oil. Just so a man say, listen, I was producing 200 barrels a day, now I gone up to 12,000 barrels a day. Woo, they come and boast in the parliament. Well, if that was true with the fake oil, then their former senatorial colleague and Rowley's best friend should have been the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister's best friend, should have been given all the land acreage in Trinidad to drill for oil since he was so good. Why didn't, if it was not fake, if it was high performance, I believe in merit. If a man and his company and his technology is so good to increase the production on an oil field by 600, 800%, I say game all, because the people will benefit. And in the United National Congress, we are here about the people benefiting, not recusal. Not ministers renting out building, not friends and family and financiers getting 55 million because a building not fit for purpose and then blaming the DPP. Project Pride, $400 million. Where the pride? The river air move. It was to move a river to put an airport. They had no airport. The river air bend and the 400 million disappear. But they're talking about corruption. PNM really.
Senator, you have 5 more minutes.
Good. I can't talk about PNM corruption in 5 minutes. BWIA, Lock Joint, Mount Hope, Tesoro, Mosquito Crack, Skinner Park, 131 million to move a FIFA football field down to a small sweat. Napa, Sapa, Shaw Park Complex, Rapid out of punch. I nearly get asthma with that. Rapid Rail. That Honorable Minister of Finance was the Minister of Works and Transport during that period, when somehow the Honorable Prime Minister and member for San Fernando East, Patrick Mervyn Augustus Manning, was put on a plane, a Bombardier jet, and just so the Express found out where he went, how they fly, what he ate, and so on. And then there was something called Trini Train that was below Bombardier, but the Prime Minister went on a Bombardier jet, and boom, Trini Train Consortium came up to win. Do you know that Trini Train Consortium part thereof was paid $481 million for feasibility study?
People, of course, I think we better end here. I think we have given you back your 10 to 15 minutes that we started late, and of course we will start with this particular topic. We'll start back with, of course, Anil Robertson tonight, and as we reach the level of corruption, as we review all of the issues that we raise as much as we can during the course of the 2023 period, between tonight and, of course, tomorrow morning. And, of course, we will be back, of course, on New Year's night, when, of course, we will be, of course, elaborating on other issues. But it is important, of course, that you get a feel as to some of the issues and what the conclusion must be. The conclusion must be that the PNM is a corrupt, nepotistic, evil, diabolical, mismanaging, incompetent, impotent, self-serving, and anti-democratic institution, where, of course, we have to be not only vigilant in a state of perpetuity or eternally, but we must also take action. Let me repeat, take action to make certain that our democracy is restored, as they are prepared, of course, to use law enforcement agencies and the army to, of course, pursue their nefarious agenda to stay in government, and do not want to spend 1 second in where they ought to be, having perpetrated such vile, such criminal, and such, of course, evil acts against the people over the last 8 years, and they will die trying. But of course, we don't mind. Let them die trying. We are going to make certain that at the end of it all, when they are demitted from office, when they are ejected from office, that the Kamala Prasad-Bisasa administration, in whatever configuration that the elections will be contested in 2025, that, of course, we insist that criminal and civil investigations take place, so that the very blue lights and, of course, the silver bracelets that Rowley had announced for them, for the Kamala Prasad-Bisasa administration and the members thereof, reach them with, of course, the fairness and the objectivity of criminal and civil adjudication. That being as it may, have a wonderful rest of the day, and let's hope that, of course, you have an incident-free one, as we continue, of course, to treat with the issues of the day, and to make certain that we do what is required in order, of course, to put you on the right path, and to, of course, at the same time, inculcate and to address the burdensome issues that have been part and parcel of the experience of Trinidad and Tobago today. That being as it may, have a wonderful one. Dr. Khaled, your parting words?
Well, it's been a pleasure on this New Year's Eve here, coming and making some points. And I can assure you, going forward, we will even come out much stronger.
Yes, indeed. Well, of course, I will give my parting words tonight, the penultimate night before New Year's. Well, of course, we will see tonight. Have a wonderful rest of the day until we meet tonight from 8 o'clock. Dr. Khaled and Lennox Smith, your hosts, saying until tonight, and of course, in the case of Dr. Khaled, until next week, Sunday. Bye-bye.
If you see the sweet muchacha, grandpa come from Calcutta. The way she's shaking up she bamba, I saw she come out for some action. Ole, 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 she shouted. The whole party now stop and watch it. She nearly drive me crazy, singing this little melody.
Gucci, 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 la la. Put more pepper in the chana. Don't know nothing about pastel. Cannot speak Spanish very well.
Gucci la la, see Betty whining la la, look Betty crying la la, oh Betty crying la. Gucci la la, see Betty whining la la, look Betty crying la la, oh Betty dancing la. Natural way. All the music fire she had, it's not perhaps she acting so dread. Says she often wonder why don't use drugs to get so high.